It's probably one of the number one questions I get being a mom of 8 kids. And that question is, what on earth are y'all doing about college? And I can tell you, with 8 different kids, 8 different learning styles, 8 different ideas about what the kids want when it comes to their careers and all of the rest, college has been a big topic of conversation around here. Well, there is a university that I want you to know about because it just hits so many of the things that are really important when it comes to considering your kid's college education. George Fox University, it's the number 1 private school in Oregon. It's a Christian university. It's located in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. And what's so great is in addition to a top-notch education, students have the opportunity to grow and deepen their faith, and they can learn in this really pivotal time in their lives who God made them to be. I mean, let's face it, we need more people coming out of our universities who know how to be leaders and how to be leaders with character. And George Fox University offers more than 60 academic majors. And that includes a nationally recognized engineering program, a nursing program. It allows your student to pursue their passions and prepare for the calling that God has for them. And let's not forget about fun when it comes to college. George Fox University students have a great student life. There are weekly campus events, there's chapel, there's service opportunities. There are 23 NCAA Division III athletic teams. Here's something that is important to me. There's a study abroad opportunity. So if your student wants to go and experience life somewhere else for a semester, they can do that. There's outdoor recreation because, of course, we're talking about Oregon, so gorgeous. George Fox University could be just the perfect fit for your student as you are looking into college, career, and all that goes beyond. George Fox University, where your student will learn and thrive in the center of it all.
Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Welcome back, listener, for episode 2 with Casey and Meygan Caston. If you haven't heard episode 1 yet, go and check it out. We are talking all things marriage, the statistics surrounding marriage today, different tools to give you what you need to help you in your marriage journey, all kinds of stuff. Now, I gave this little heads up last week. I want to give it again. We are direct about some things in marriage, some of the challenges facing marriage. So you might want to put on some headphones. This might be one of those episodes that's the best approach. And I want to invite you to make sure you've listened to episode 1. Now come listen to episode 2, where I welcome Casey and Meygan Caston from Marriage 365. One of the things that I talk about with our family when I'm interviewed and people say kind of what's, the thread, the core, and there are the Christian answers, of course, which are important. But I've said, for us, it's always been, we laughed. Like laughter is a huge component, even with the differences that my husband and I have. That has been a shared value. If something's funny, if we can laugh together, and I would call it a value, even though some people might think that's a little trivial. But man, I'm telling you, that has been the glue at times that's been really important for us. There's something else you mentioned too that I think is really important. Casey, you talked about that really honoring those differences and those strengths in the other partner. I sometimes see couples get stuck because we are a reflection to each other, right? So if one is more structured and the other is more spontaneous, sometimes what the structured person might not like is the reflection they're getting from that spontaneous partner of, am I the stick in the mud? I'm not the stick in the mud. I'm a fun person, or the opposite side of that, the structured person, the reflection sometimes to the spontaneous one is, well, I'm not a mess. I'm not, I can do stuff. So what are some tips for getting to a place where you can be more honest about who you are and not resent the difference in your partner as almost like it's calling you out or something? Because I see people get in a loop around that's really, and it's hard for them to celebrate the differences because they don't like what it highlights in themselves that they don't like.
2 habits that we do that I think are really, really powerful. We teach our community. One is the 60-second blessing. Okay. The 60-second blessing was a habit that was introduced to us when we were in a hurting season of our life. And it was the ability for us to speak life back into our relationship. It was a very intentional act 60 seconds, right? It's just 60 seconds is a container of time just to say, all right, I'm going to spend these next moments sharing with you verbally my love and appreciation for who you are. And you're not the stick in the mud. You're actually a needed piece in our relationship. And I continually plant seeds that Meygan is appreciated and needed in our family. And I think that right there overcomes that idea. Like I'm weighing the relationship down. So that was one.
Can you explain the second part of the 60-second blessing?
So the 60-second blessing is where I will give Meygan words of affirmation and words of blessing, words of appreciation for 60 seconds. And then she returns that back to me. And so it's an exchange.
Then I would say this, we typically tell couples, write down 5 to 7 things like on a journal or a notes page on a phone. And then literally you can set your alarm. You'd be shocked at how fast a minute goes by. People get a little nervous and you sit down, you go, and then you just read your list to each other. And then the second spouse goes. It's amazing. It's one of I think it's our number one watch video on YouTube. It's incredible.
And it's pulled straight from Proverbs. Right? Our words have the power to give life or to get death, death. And if we are not intentional in giving words of life, I just don't think it's naturally going to happen in relationships, because we were at a Christian family camp and we had a gentleman that came to us in tears, and he said, and he brought his family and his grandkids. And he's like, this is the first time I've heard words of appreciation from my wife over 30 years.
Yeah, we had done the 60-second blessing. We taught it there.
And this is about being proactive in our relationship. And again, we teach couples that are in affair recovery, thinking about separating. And we go, this is the thing right here that's going to bring about fresh new life. Just speak those words. That's all it takes.
So that's like a positive spin on how you can talk about differences within the 60 seconds. Like, I love your spontaneity and I love this. Like, it's a way to do it.
Mom. You're an amazing, amazing mom. I did not have a great example of a mother growing up. But that is something I speak over Meygan all the time. I go, you are kind of this redemption for me of what does a true mother look like?
To clarify, I don't mother him.
Right. He gets to appreciate it for your kids. Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you, babe.
So
that was number one. And number two.
Yeah. Oh, number two is a tool that we use in our own relationship. And that is just by asking open-ended questions of each other. To really understand and gain a knowledge base of our value systems, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, our concerns, and having that as a regular dialogue as part of our relationship. Now, I kind of got stuck in a rut where I was asking really boring questions when I came home from work. I would ask, I'd walk in the door and it was the 3P. Hey, how was your day? Okay, wrap it up real quick because I'm hungry. So, by the way, what's for dinner?
What's for dinner?
And then the third one was, can we have sex?
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. That was my 3P.
And it was really boring. I was like, is this it? Like, we used to talk about so many interesting things. And I remember going, let's sit down and talk. And we just, after a long day of work and the kids, it's hard to be creative, which is why one of the many resources we created at Marriage 365 is our book, 365 Connecting Questions for Couples. Right. Because we wanted to provide a resource, not just for couples, but really selfishly for us.
True.
And Casey always says, if you see us on a date night around town in Orange County, we literally have our own book. Yeah. And not because we're obsessed with it, but because it really does help any couple.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're speaking to the intentionality that it takes. One of my kids, it's so funny, at the dinner table, somebody gave us as a gift years ago a pack of questions that you could ask, each other at the dinner table. I ended up working on some other projects, some along those lines and that kind of thing. What it highlighted to me and what your book, 365 Connecting Questions for Couples, highlights is the intentionality that it actually takes to stay engaged. And too often I think we go, well, make sure you've got a regular date night. But what happens on that date night, the level of conversation, the level of intentionality is really what you're after. It's not so much necessarily the date itself. It's the intentionality of creating the time and asking the kinds of questions of each other that continue that discovery process of understanding this important human in your life. It creates connection to be heard in that way. And yet for some reason, kind of like the falling in love thing, kind of like what we think it should be like. There shouldn't be conflict, on and on and on. We think it's going to have a level of just intuition to it that, frankly, not so much. So that's why I'm so thankful for the kind of resources that y'all have put together, that you've put so much time and heart into. Let me ask you this. We were talking a little bit earlier about statistics surrounding couples. Your story includes that at the 3-year mark, it looked like things were going to really implode and explode. And that statistically bears out now. We used to talk about the 7-year itch, but we see now statistically that marriages are very often in peril around the 3-year mark, that's a pretty common thing for people. But I got to tell y'all, man, what I'm seeing, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on mics, is that the gray divorce, we call it, where a couple has hit that 30-year mark, 25, 30-year mark. And you would think that so many of the things that are very challenging in some of those formative years of marriage, at 10 years, at 15 years, having the kids and getting everybody to all the practices and building the career and where finances is and all that, you see a couple clear that, hit what feels like should be an easier season, and everything comes apart. So what are you seeing in your work? Because this is such a level of focus for y'all. What are you seeing? What do we do about investing and being intentional toward, doing what we can to not find ourselves at 30 years going, oh, now we're going to all start over? Like what do we do?
Yeah. So year 4 to 10 is the number one time a couple will divorce.
Okay.
And typically, so that 7-year itch is in there.
Okay.
And so that's really when the kids are young. And what happens is, a lot of them will say, you know what, we don't want to damage or traumatize our children. So let's stay married. We're going to quit, but we're going to stay.
Quit and stay. That's a great phrase. Yeah.
And people do that at work. A lot of people do that where they're still getting a paycheck, but they're not giving their all to the company.
Right.
So it's the same kind of idea. And so then the kids get older, right? They graduate high school, they go off to college, and the husband and wife look at each other and say, I don't even know you. I don't even know if I like you, because we didn't tend and nurture our connection and our relationship for decades at that point, to where do I really want to spend the second half of my life with a stranger, with someone that, even though I raised a family with, I just don't really like or love anymore. I can respect them. We have a family together, but they're not fun. And so agreed. The second most common time to divorce is the empty nest phase. And what we always say is you cannot put a pause on your marriage. It doesn't work. If you have paused your marriage, like, oh, well, we're just raising kids and it's just busy. Well, guess what? Well, you have 8 kids, Julie. We only have 2. It's just busy, right?
Yeah, it's busy.
Just busy.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's not like it goes away, but you're right. You would think it would. And so that's why you have to nurture it and be very, very intentional, or you will go through a great divorce. And let me just add one more thing, because I know Casey really wants to say something, is we work with a lot of adult children where their parents did that. They stayed together for the sake of the kids. And I will tell you, it can ruin your relationship with your children. And the reason why I throw that out there, and it should scare you in a bit, because the kids go, but we didn't ask for that.
Right.
And you lied to me. My entire childhood is a sham. And now as an adult, you have to recognize, like, wait, you guys stayed married, but you weren't happy, and you said you did it for us, but we didn't ask for that. Like, what else did you lie about? Huh, babe? And it really changes the parent dynamic.
And then think about, I always say our kids never do what we tell them to do. They do what they see us doing.
Right.
So now you've modeled for your children that it's okay to quit and stay in marriage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the role model that you've established. So yeah,
We see that yes, I would say, Julie, we are seeing a massive increase with the great divorce. In fact, I'd say we do these things called 2-day marriage intensives for couples in crisis. And I'd say, but probably half of the ones we've done this year have been they're empty nesters.
Yeah.
I would just add to this is that, you think about maybe if you're in the starting phase of your marriage, I don't think anybody intentionally is like, hey, you know what? This is so much fun. Let's do this for 20 years. Grow apart, be lonely, and then we're going to divorce once we've given ourselves to our career and our kids.
Yeah.
But it's because of the lack of intentionality. Like you said, Julie, it's because of that one thing, which is really why we're Marriage 365. You have to be intentional 365 days. That's the point behind our name. It's the lack of intentionality that actually kicks people, the 1 or 2 degrees off. And there's a nautical term that I like to talk about, and it's called the law of 1 in 60, that for every 1 degree off you are from your heading, when you go 60 miles, you will be 1 mile off of that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That target. And so, probably the first 60 miles, you're not really feeling it necessarily. Like we're losing track of our goals. And that's, I think, actually the kind of insidious part of being on autopilot is that the first month that you kind of experience disconnection, no one's freaking out. But then what happens is, because it's maybe it's like the pot in the boiling water, the frog in the boiling water.
Yeah, you just don't know that it's...
You just don't notice it until it's too late.
So painful.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, we're trying to find connection or goals and dreams. And we're now we've established a pattern for decades, for years.
And it seems overwhelming.
Of disconnection. And now we're trying to scramble back to find each other. And what happens, what we see, Julie, is one of the spouses kind of pokes their head up and says, whoa, we are so off course. Let's get back on track. And the other spouse is asleep at the wheel and does not want to be disturbed. And that's where the scramble happens. Like, what do I do? How do I engage my spouse? How do I work on my marriage by myself? Like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, is that, a lot of people work on their relationship by themselves because the other person doesn't, you've kind of taught that person it's okay for us to do it this way.
This way.
This long.
Yeah.
Right? We go back to boundaries. Right?
We teach people how to treat us, what we allow, what we don't allow. But can I give a message of hope to say, we believe it's rarely ever too late for a couple. Most marriage problems are actually fixable. There are something called the 4 A's: abuse, addiction, affairs, abandonment. We can maybe come on another time and talk more about that. And even with those 4 things, those can be fixed if the person goes and gets help and professional help, and there's remorse and healing and whatnot in therapy. But most marriage problems are fixable.
Right.
But it has to start with one person.
Yeah, I had made a note about, those elements of the 4 things that really can, this is probably done. Do you know statistically, are most marriages ending because of what is seen as a lack of compatibility? Or do you think statistically it's because you're landing somewhere in one of those 4 A's? What do you guys see?
So rarely do we see divorces end in fire and explosions. Most divorces are indifferent spouses that actually have nothing left in the tank.
Autopilot. They've been on autopilot.
They're living out kind of what I had just mentioned, where they have slowly drifted apart, and now the decades have gone, and they are miles away, hundreds of miles away from their destination, and they just see that as insurmountable. And they're like, you know what? I don't know you. You haven't given me any sense of appreciation for years. You haven't even noticed me. And everything that we talk about is very transactional: bills, kids, schedules. Nothing's heart to heart. And it's been like that for years. So they walk to the divorce attorney's office, not with this rage, but just indifference.
Right.
I'm done.
The Gottmans talk about that indifference is such a massive problem. That's one of the resources too that y'all have referred to. John and Julie Gottman have done a ton of work. You guys are referencing them. But of course, resources like Marriage 365, those are the things that I think become really practical for people. There's the theory and the statistics and the things that we notice and that we see. And then there is a way to be boots on the ground that's really powerful. And I do think when we can lay templates for people, it's so helpful. In the faith space, I feel like we've only kind of given a couple of templates, if you will, historically. And that's not to say anything about any other marriage ministries or anything else, but I found for myself, a lot of times when we approach marriage from a very, if you will, this is what a husband does, this is what a wife does, this is how a man feels, this is how a woman feels. I haven't always fallen cleanly into some of those containers. And so sometimes some of the advice and the tools or equipping I was getting from certain ministries wouldn't be as helpful for me because I just didn't see it. And that's just not who I am. It's one of the things that I love in your ministry because I feel like Julie, it's more open.
Okay, wait, we both have so much to say. I'm going to throw out one thing. Okay, it used to be, no, this is exactly what you're, no, you just like lit up all of our buttons because you're 100% accurate. And we get, that's mainly people who we reach that are very frustrated with the resources that are out there. But one of the statistics I would say is that we're seeing an increase where women have a higher sex drive than men.
Oh, I was seeing that all the time in women's ministry.
All the time. So when you hear all the jokes, the TikTok videos, whatever, it's always the man is in the mood and the wife is not. Yeah, so that was always about 90% of the situation and 10%. Now we're seeing it 70-30.
Yeah.
So 30% of the time, the female has more of the sex drive and the man doesn't. And now there's a lot of reasons behind that. But I wanted to say that that's one example.
No, and I'm the feeler, you're the thinker in our relationship.
Yep. Casey's totally the empath. He's so empathic and he's so like, he's a really great listener. And I'm more like, fix it. Right. I want to problem solve and fix it.
Yeah. Mike and I are very similar in that way. And I also found too, I mean, to your point, the sex drive issue, I can verify for y'all. Being in women's ministry, somebody would arrange to come chat with me to have a pastoral conversation. There would be issues in the marriage. I don't even know if I could represent from a percentage how many times it was that the woman had a higher sex drive. And then you get the next round of whatever kind of typical marriage ministry stuff. And it would start out with a man is visual and the woman is, and I'm like, man, I don't know where we thought we came up with some of that. And it may apply to some people, but this is not a lot of what I'm seeing in this group of women I'm trying to serve and the challenges they're having. Another one I'm seeing too, that we're seeing come up more and more. And this is a place where sometimes I worry that spiritually we haven't done a good job helping equip people is when it comes to mental load and physical load in the home. And we have women who are working more than ever, making less than guys. So if you're trying to justify it on who earns more and who doesn't and all that kind of stuff. And I'm seeing it, I'm sure y'all have seen it, but it was shocking to me when I first started seeing it, is what the secular world was calling the walk-away wife syndrome. A woman with kids and kids still in the home and all the things and just throwing her hands up and saying, I cannot do all of this anymore. It was shocking to me the first time that I started seeing it in spiritual circles. And then I started seeing it more and more and more. And I was like, man, we've got to get to some of the core of what's going on here.
Yeah. And part of the main reason that that's happening is the impact of social media.
Yes.
Because it's a comparison. You see all these women. I always look at the women with white couches and I'm like, how do you have children with white couches? It's not a judgment. I would love a white couch. But then you go, well, gosh, like, am I messy because I can't have a white couch? And I have 2 children and you have 5 children. It sounds silly, but that's what happens. And social media has had a massive, I mean, I think there's so much good on social media. We're on social media. Right. But I think the negative side to it is that women are on social media more than men. That's a fact, right?
Right.
And so we are impacted by that. The other thing I want to say about the sex drive is that we want to know the reasons why it's changing because it has changed. Pornography is one of the leading reasons that men don't need to now go to their wife and enjoy it. They can have self-sex. We call it, self-sex, and there's partner sex. Well, partner sex is a lot harder. There's moods and conflict and smells and, what's for dinner? And we got to have that conversation about your mom. And, self-sex with porn is just really simple. No one needs to know about it. It's a quick fix. So there's all these different factors. There are reasons behind all these things and these shifts changing and happening.
Okay. I want to get back to, are you done?
Yeah.
I want to get back to Julie's question, because I think it was one of those things that was really harmful to our relationship early on. And that was it was the religious message of just put Jesus at the center of your marriage and pray for a great marriage and you should get it. But it never so I was always told that you need to apologize, but I never was told how to apologize in a way that actually makes impact. Right, so when we first got married, I just say, sorry. I apologized. Mm-hmm. I've been told, and I have been born and raised in the church, I've been told to forgive other people.
And it sounds wonderful.
And yeah,
I agree.
But Julie, no pastor has ever broken down what does forgiveness really look like?
Right.
And I will say that, Marriage 365 is a ministry that is inspired. And it was a call that God put on Meygan and I's life. But it was a very distinctive call to actually go and work outside the walls of the church, which is probably why you don't see us at Christian Marriage Ministries, because we're kind of very incognito and we're out amongst the people that are not navigating church. So it almost stripped us of the ability just to throw a scripture at it.
Mm-hmm. Right. You had to get really granular. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We had to break that down and go, and it really forced us even to go, okay, so if we can't just say, I'm sorry, how do we actually apologize? And we had to start to pull in from other resources and other, really investigate in different areas of knowledge bases, right?
And try in our own relationship. Let's sit down.
Yeah.
An example would be, we have a worksheet that has examples of how to validate your spouse, because it came from a fight and an argument that Casey and I had. I said, I just don't feel like you're validating me. And he's like, but I swear to you, I feel like I am. He's like, what if you wrote down phrases that would show me, that would tell you, that that I'm validating you? And I thought, well, that's a brilliant idea. And so we created a worksheet,
And the 60-second blessing, exactly what we talked about, is straight from the book of Proverbs. Now I could say this is Proverbs 13, but that wouldn't land well with our audience that we reach. So we just have to say, an ancient Jewish proverb said that your words have the power to give life or to give death, and you get to choose them.
And then we put structure around it to make it understandable, especially for people like me who need structure, a plan, their fix it. I need a step 1, step 2, step 3 that really provides guidance. And I would say too, the other thing I'm going to throw out there is that there's it's really interesting that specifically marriage stuff in general, whether it's in the church or out of the church, is geared for females. They know marriage books.
What gives?
That's who sells. Yeah, that's who's going to buy. Yeah.
And that bothers me, because guess who's the other half of my marriage is my husband. And I could have all these wonderful, women have written some incredible books out there, but if my husband's not going to be interested in it or not read it, or if we're going to go to a conference and it's mainly geared towards females, he's never going to go again. And so we really always work on things to where Casey and other men are so
what's a guy's favorite store to go to? Home Depot.
Right.
Because it's full of tools. Mm-hmm. And there's something about a guy staring at a bunch of tools. They're like, man, I could use that, power wrench in a certain situation or whatnot. And I think the same thing is true with the things that we've created for Marriage 365. For me, I've had influence to say, I need tools. You're asking me to build a house, a home, a secure place for you and for my kids. But you have given me no tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've only given me platitudes.
Just some little slips of paper that say, be nice, be kind. Yeah. And it's interesting, Casey, to your point, I was asked to come speak one time to a group of guys on marriage. It was an all male audience, and they were able to send in questions to me and all this kind of stuff. It was fascinating. And one of the things that they kept sending in was, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I said, do all of you own a legal pad, a yellow legal pad? Yes. Have you ever drawn up a business plan? Yes. That's what we're going to do. And we did business plans for marriage. And what was fascinating about it was there are those who are going to say that that's not terribly romantic. And I understand that. Believe me, I love some great romance. But I think that we, in many ways, continue to try to make it feel so mysterious and so nebulous that very capable, apt guys who know how to build and do things in every other component of their life don't feel like it's valid to bring the legal yellow pad to the table. And it is. It's a very valid way of examining and thinking about how you want to build this really critical component of your life. Now, I love that with 365 Connecting Questions, y'all have actually brought out a new edition with 200 new questions. Talk to me about the process of diving back into a work that was so well thought out and loved. And yet I so appreciate the fact that in this new edition, you're willing to refresh it in a way based on the things you've been experiencing in your ministry. So tell me about this newest round and the new questions and all the stuff.
Absolutely. So yeah, we self-published this book back in 2018 and we ended up selling 100,000 copies self-published.
Amazing.
Yes. And then Random House came to us this last year and they were like, we love it. We love the entire idea of this book. And I love partnering with Random House. They've been wonderful to work with and they really want to see healthy relationships in the world. So we basically update it to where you don't have to be married. So you can be seriously dating or engaged. So all the questions aren't married. We don't even use the word marriage. We use the word relationship. We added a whole new mental health topic. We didn't have that before. And then there's some new bonus sections. There's one on faith and spirituality. Whoop, whoop. That was one of the number one requested topics that we didn't have really in our self-published book. And the other one is on parenting. And so what's really great is if you're listening and you're an empty nester and you're like, well, we don't really want to do the parenting questions. That's why we stuck it in the bonus section. So it won't interfere with the 365, daily question that you get for the day. And it's just been incredible. It came out a couple weeks ago and to see already the impact it's having. And it's really something that we can guarantee connection because that's what we really want. We really want to be seen and heard and we want to connect. Like you mentioned, Julie, on a date night, it's not even so much about like what we're doing on the date night. It's the intentionality and we're longing to be connected with one another.
Yeah. And the number one way, according to science, to build emotional intimacy, closeness, safety is by asking open-ended questions. And of course, I would say that was modeled by Jesus, who asked, almost 200 recorded questions where he was asking people and drawing them out. And I think that there's a sense of intentionality behind, let's dedicate some time. We're just going to kind of pause life and it's just going to be you and me. We're talking about, what are our value systems? What are your hopes and dreams? And there's a loving sense of curiosity too. Of like, I want to know this about you. One of the most loving things we can do is actually stop talking and start listening to our spouse and give them that space. Right. And that communicates non-verbally desires, which is why I tell all my husbands, I'm like, if you want to have a better sex life, you need to buy this book because this is a unique tool that creates this emotional closeness, which then physical intimacy is this expression of, I feel safe with you.
Right. Of being safe. Yeah. I love that. Well, y'all have been so generous with your time. Casey and Meygan, tell the listener where they can go to find out more about Marriage 365, where all the resources are, where they can find the book, 365 Connecting Questions for Couples, just all the stuff that's in your world.
All the stuff. Yeah. The best thing to do is to go to marriage365.com. We've got everything there, the link to the book and whatnot. We also do have an app. It's just the Marriage 365 app. So you can go to the Google Play Store, Apple Store, and that's our number one resource we have.
Awesome. Well, y'all, this has been an absolute delight. I absolutely want to have you on again when you have time because I think there is so much more to unpack there. Thank you for the way that you are investing in relationships, in the hope that you bring that so many marriages, even if they feel like they're right at the edge, there is hope, there are tools, there are things that you can do. And for the encouragement to always be working on ourselves, to be getting healthier and healthier, because that's the thing that is also going to help us in our relationship with others, with God, when we are able to fully be who we were created to be. And when we're able to bring that to relationships, I really think that's what God has intended. So thank you so much for the work that you do. It's just incredible.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Absolutely. All right, friend, you know what to do. The show notes, Rebecca puts them together. You're going to find all the links for Casey and Meygan's resources that are going to help you. They're going to be incredible. As a thank you, would you do this for me? They've been so amazing. They gave us extra time. Would you grab the link for these episodes and send them to someone you love? Send them to someone who you know could really benefit from hearing this message. That is the greatest thank you can give to my guests and to us. So we really appreciate it. Be sure and check out AllMomDoes, allmomdoes.com on the socials. I love to hear from you too. Julie Lyles Carr, all the places, but I'm mainly over on Instagram. Send in those questions and send in those guest suggestions. We want to know what you want to learn about, who you want to hear from, and I'll see you next time on the AllMomDoes podcast.